I've never told anyone this. Not my family, not my closest friend, not even the person I trust most in this world. Because every time I try to say it out loud, it sounds insane. But it happened, and I need someone to know. I grew up in a house that sat at the edge of a long, flat field. Not a farm, just open land, dry grass, a few dead trees in the distance. The kind of place where nothing ever happens. And for years, nothing did. I used to sit on the back porch at night. Just me, the dark, and the sound of insects. It was calming. It was my routine. Finish dinner, step outside, breathe. Simple, safe. I never once felt afraid out there. Until one night, the insects stopped. It didn't register immediately. That's the thing about silence, it sneaks up on you. One moment there's a full chorus of crickets and frogs and distant birds. And then, nothing. I remember looking up from my phone, staring out at the field, thinking maybe a dog had wandered nearby and spooked them. I waited. The silence stayed. Not peaceful silence, not quiet night silence. This was heavy, pressurized, like the air itself had gone still and was holding its breath. I felt it in my chest first, this low, dull unease. Like something was wrong, but I couldn't name it. I told myself, "You're being dramatic." I looked back at my phone. Then I saw the light. It wasn't in the sky. That's the part that scared me. It was in the field, low to the ground, maybe 100 meters out. Just a soft glow, pale, almost white, but not quite. Like someone had left a lantern sitting in the grass. I stared at it. My first thought was, someone's out there. A person, a flashlight maybe. But it wasn't moving like a flashlight moves. It wasn't sweeping or bouncing. It was perfectly still, and it was pulsing, slowly, rhythmically, like breathing. I stood up from my chair. My eyes were locked on it. Part of me wanted to call out, "Hey, who's there?" But something stopped me. Something deep and instinctual said, "Don't make a sound." So I didn't. I just watched. And then the light tilted. That's the only word I have for it. It didn't move sideways. It didn't lift. It just tilted. Like whatever was carrying it had leaned. Like something had turned its head toward me. My hands went cold. I didn't move. I don't think I breathed. The light stayed tilted for what felt like a full minute. Then it began moving, slowly, toward the house, toward me. I took one step back through the door. Just one. And in that moment when my foot crossed the threshold, the light stopped, dead still. Like it knew. Like it had felt my movement from 100 meters away. I remember my heart was hammering so loud I could feel it in my ears. My mouth was completely dry, and I was doing that thing where you want to scream but you just can't. Like your voice has been switched off. I kept my eyes on the light. It sat there, still, pulsing, and then very slowly, something rose up behind it. Not the light, something above it. A shape, tall, too tall, and thin in a way that made no sense. Like something that had been stretched. Arms if they were arms hanging low, almost to where knees should be. It didn't move. It just stood there, in the dark, behind the light, watching. I slammed the door. I don't remember deciding to. My body just did it. I hit the light switch, stumbled back, knocked a chair over and didn't care. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely lock the door. I stood in the kitchen, chest heaving, telling myself it was a person, a tall person, with a lantern. But the way it stood, humans don't stand like that. The proportions were wrong. Everything was wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with every light in the house on. Around 3 inches the morning, I heard something outside the back door. Not a knock, not footsteps, just pressure. Like something pressing very slowly against the door from the outside. And then it stopped. In the morning, I went outside. I had to. I had to see if there was anything, footprints, marks in the grass, anything that would make it make sense. I walked to the spot where I'd seen the light. The grass was flattened, in a wide circle, like something heavy had sat there. And at the very center of the circle, the ground was warm. Not sun warm, not animal warm. Warm like metal gets when a machine has been running. I stood there in the daylight, and I felt more afraid than I had the night before. Because in the daylight, there was no darkness to blame, no tricks of the light, no tired eyes. Just flat, warm, flattened grass. And the feeling crawling up the back of my neck that whatever had been there was watching me remember it. I moved away from that house 6 months later. I told people it was time for a change. I said I needed something new. That was partly true, but the real reason? I woke up one morning and looked out at the field. And at the edge of it, right where the dead trees begin, something was standing, still, watching, in broad daylight. And it was tall and thin. I closed the curtains. I started packing that same day. I don't know what it was. I don't know why it came. But some nights, even now, in a completely different place, the insects go quiet, and I don't go outside anymore. I used to think the sky was safe, that whatever you feared lived on the ground, in the dark, behind you. I don't think that anymore. It started on a drive, long, empty highway, no other cars, just me and the road and a sky that was doing something beautiful. Huge storm clouds building at the horizon, lit up orange and purple from the setting sun. I remember thinking, I should pull over and take a photo. So I did. I pulled onto the shoulder, rolled my window down, held up my phone. That's when I noticed it. One of the clouds wasn't moving. Now I know how that sounds. Clouds slow down. Clouds stall. There's nothing strange about a stationary cloud. But every other cloud in the sky was drifting. Slowly, but visibly. You could track them against the tree line. Every cloud was moving, except this one. It sat there, dense, dark, lower than the others, perfectly still while the rest of the sky shifted around it. I took the photo anyway. I told myself it was just the angle. I told myself I was tired. I drove on. About 20 minutes later, I stopped for fuel at a small station on the side of the highway. I got out of the car, stretched, looked up out of habit, and there it was. The same cloud, still there. Same shape, same density, same position relative to the horizon. I had driven 20 minutes. The cloud had not moved, not even slightly. I want you to think about that for a moment. I want you to really sit with it, because I stood there at that fuel pump, and I ran through every explanation I could think of. Wind pattern, isolated air pocket, temperature inversion. I don't know meteorology, but I know that something that sits absolutely motionless in a moving sky for over 20 minutes is not behaving like a cloud. I paid inside. I asked the person at the counter casually, like I was just making conversation if the weather had been strange lately. They looked at me a second too long. Then they said, "You see something out there." Something about the way they said it made the hair on my arm stand up. I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "People have been stopping all week, asking about the sky." They wouldn't say anything else after that. Just turned back to the counter. I got in my car. I sat there for a minute. The cloud was still there, still not moving. I drove. Night fell slowly. The sky went dark in stages, deep blue, then purple, then black. Stars appeared. The cloud didn't disappear. That's what I kept coming back to. Clouds dissolve at night. The moisture disperses. The temperature drops. They break apart. This one didn't. It stayed on the horizon like a smudge, like something solid pretending to be a cloud. And as the sky got darker, I started to see something I couldn't explain. A faint light. Inside it, not lightning. Lightning flashes and vanishes. This was slow, rhythmic, like a pulse. I pulled over again. I turned off my engine. I sat in the dark and I watched. The light pulsed 3 times. Then it stopped. Then the cloud moved. Not the way clouds move drifting, Gradual, formless. It moved the way a vehicle moves. Deliberate, controlled, in a straight line, toward me. I started the car. My hands weren't shaking yet, my brain hadn't fully caught up. I was running on some lower level survival mode that just said, drive. So I drove. Fast? I watched the rearview mirror more than the road. For the first 10 minutes, the horizon was clear. Just dark sky, stars, nothing. I started to breathe again. I started to think, okay, it was a cloud. You're overtired. Your brain pattern matched something ordinary into something terrifying. And then I looked up through the windshield. It was in front of me, ahead of me now, on the horizon, directly in front of me. The same shape, the same density, the same faint, slow pulse. It had gotten ahead of me, on a straight highway. While I was watching it in my rearview mirror, I don't know how to explain that. I've tried for a long time. I've gone over it, and over it. It was behind me. And then, it was in front of me, without passing me, without me seeing it move. I didn't stop. I kept driving. I watched it. I tracked it. I refused to take my eyes off the horizon. And about 20 minutes later, it simply wasn't there. No dissolving, no drifting away, no slow fade. One moment it was there. The next, nothing. Just dark sky. Just stars. I made it to where I was going. I sat in a parking lot for a while, just breathing. When I looked at the photo I'd taken on the side of the road, the one of the beautiful storm clouds, there was a dark shape in it. Low, dense, and beneath it, something I hadn't seen with my naked eye. A shadow on the ground, like something casting a shadow downward. From inside the cloud, I've zoomed into that photo more times than I can count. I've tried to explain the shadow. I can't. The thing that bothers me most, that still bothers me, even now, isn't what I saw. It's what the person at the fuel station said. People have been stopping all week, asking about the sky. I wasn't the only one, which means whatever it was, it had been there a while. Watching the road, watching the cars, watching us move through what we thought was empty air. I don't look at clouds the same way anymore. And sometimes, late at night on a clear sky, I'll see something that doesn't move, something that stays perfectly still, while everything else drifts. And I don't stop to take a photo. I just drive faster. This one is the hardest to talk about, because it didn't happen in a field. It didn't happen on an empty road. It happened in a neighborhood, surrounded by other people, in a place where you're supposed to feel safe. And that's exactly what made it so disturbing. I've been living in the same apartment for about 2 years. 3rd floor, street-facing window, the kind of place where you hear everything: traffic, neighbors, kids playing, and it becomes white noise after a while. You stop noticing. That's how it works in built-up areas. You tune it out. I think that's what it was counting on. It was late. Not the middle of the night, maybe. Just past midnight. I was sitting at my desk near the window, working. The blinds were half open. I hadn't bothered to close them because the building across the street had always been empty. An old building. Hadn't been occupied since before I moved in. Ground floor boarded up. Windows dark and dusty. Nobody lived there. Nobody ever went in or out. I'd lived across from it for 2 years and never thought twice about it. I got up for a glass of water, walked back to my desk, glanced out the window like I always did, and stopped. There was a light on. 4th floor of the empty building. Window directly across from mine. Close enough that if both windows were open and you shouted, you'd be heard. A light, faint, slightly blue-white, like a phone screen but bigger, slower. In a building that had no electricity, that had been empty for years. I stood there holding my glass of water. My brain started doing what brains do. It started building explanations. Squatters, a maintenance worker who came late, kids who broke in. But the light wasn't moving like a torch moves. It wasn't casting around, searching. It was just on, steady, filling the window, and then, slowly, Something moved in front of it. That's all I can call it. It stood in front of the light source, and it paused, right at the window, looking out. Now from a distance, at night, through glass. I know that sounds like a person, just a person standing at a window. I know that's the logical answer, but the proportions were wrong. The head was too large, not dramatically, not monster movie large, just slightly. A fraction too wide, a fraction too high. The kind of wrong that your eye catches before your brain does. The kind that makes you stop mid-movement and not know why. I didn't move. I stood by my desk with the glass of water and I stared. And it stood there. And I had the sudden, overwhelming, nauseating feeling that it was staring back, not glancing out, not scanning the street, staring directly at my window, directly at me. I took a slow step to the side, out of the center of the window, into the shadow near my bookcase. The silhouette moved, the same direction, tracking me. I can't explain the fear that moved through me in that moment. It wasn't panic. Panic is loud and fast. This was the opposite. This was cold, slow, like ice water filling me from the feet up. Because a person doesn't track movement like that. A person glances. A person reacts with a delay. This had no delay. I moved. It moved. Instant. Perfect. Mirror. Like it had been watching so long. So closely. It knew exactly where I was. I dropped below the window line, sat on the floor with my back against the wall, below the glass, heart hammering, telling myself, stand up, look again, it'll be gone. You imagined it. I stayed on the floor for a long time. Eventually, I don't know how long, maybe 20 minutes, I pulled myself up, slowly, just my eyes above the windowsill. The light was still on, the silhouette was gone, but the light was still on. I watched it for another hour. Nothing moved. The light just sat there, steady, pale, like it was waiting for me to stop watching. I finally closed my blinds. I lay down. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I looked immediately. The building was dark. Every window black and dusty. Boards still up on the ground floor. No sign of anyone. No sign of anything. But that afternoon, I went outside. I walked across the street. I stood below the building and I looked up at the fourth floor window, the one that had been lit. The glass was thick with years of dust, except in one spot, one circular smudge, right in the center of the glass. Like something had pressed its face against it, from the inside, pressed close, and breathed. I stood on the pavement and I looked at that smudge and I felt the world go slightly unsteady under me. Because the smudge was on the inside of the glass, which meant something had been in there, up close, pressed to the window, when from across the street it had looked like it was just standing back, just watching from a distance. It hadn't been at a distance. It had been right there, right against the glass, close enough to breathe on it. Watching me from centimeters away through a window I thought was too far to see into clearly. I went back to my apartment. I closed every blind in every room. That was months ago. I still haven't reopened them. Here's the part I've been putting off telling you. A few weeks after it happened, I was going through photos on my phone, just scrolling, not looking for anything. I came across a photo I didn't remember taking. It was taken from my window, at night, looking across at the empty building. I did not take this photo. I was not awake for this photo. It was taken at 17 inches the morning, and in it, in the fourth floor window, two pale shapes, side by side, pressed against the glass, looking across, at me, at my window, at my sleeping apartment. There was only ever one silhouette when I was watching. The second one had been behind it, staying out of sight, waiting. I don't know what they were. I don't know what they wanted, but I know this. The night I saw one of them, both of them were watching me, and I only ever saw one. Close your blinds tonight, and if you wake up at 3 inches the morning, don't look out the window, because whatever is out there already knows your face.